Using a new platform today to do these live coachings. Today is October 3rd, 2023, and all I can hope is that it's working. So hopefully some of my regulars that meet me on YouTube will be able to go into the chat and give me a thumbs up that it is working. I know we're going to be streaming on a few other platforms. Hopefully, it's working on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. But there's only one way to find out, and that is to give this a whirl. I'm starting a few minutes early because I wanted to make sure that this works. But I only will be able to find out when I start to see eyeballs light up. So I'm going to ask you guys, of course, to just be aware that anytime I do this, the better the questions are, the more likely that I can, riff off something. So if you're able to do that, that's what I would suggest. You just give me your questions or comments, and I'm going to take them and coach right in real time. But my hope is that those comments come in. I can certainly riff about a few things, but to give you a small introduction, my name is Kim Ann Curtin, the Wall Street Coach. I've been coaching for 17 years. I specialize in coaching with traders who really want to up-level their trading and up-level their personal life. So I hope you guys will be able to participate in this. It's only showing me that I have no participants right now, but I think that could be because I'm starting a few minutes early. We usually have a good handful of people that come in. My light just got blown over by the wind, so I just stopped it. We have one person that's showing up here on Restream. If you're in a position to, would you comment for me to see if the chat box shows it? You guys are like on this ride with me, hoping that it works. One of the things that I've been doing when I do the coaching on YouTube is take questions from the audience and having chat. So if you can go into the chat, I understand. Oh, good. Sandcat, thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here. Is there anything you want coaching on? I would love to hear what your question is. I'm just going to close the window because it's starting to get really breezy, so it doesn't knock everything over. But Sandcat, if and only if you're comfortable to put your comment in the chat box, let me know what I can do. It's a good evening to you as well. Sandcat, would you be willing to tell me what platform you're viewing this on? YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter? I'm just going to close the window a bit so it doesn't get blown over. Okay, the wind's just picked up here. So tell me what platform you're watching this on. And I'm so glad to have you here. Sandcat, if you do have anything you want me to coach you on, feel free to put that in the chat box, and then that allows me to speak on it. We have YouTube. Okay, great. I'm so glad because we have a lot of people in the YouTube station that always come on. And because this is expanded beyond that today, I'm just happy to know that it's working. So thank you so much for your help, Sandcat. And hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So do let me know, Sandcat, if there's anything specific you want me to take on. If you had did you have a good trading day? Was it a difficult day for you? Tell me what you might want to bring to this conversation. What I do want to say, guys, is that I have just a couple of spots left for the group coaching if you're interested in it, for the accelerated spot. So if and only if that would serve you, I would love to see you guys join us. This Thursday night is going to be our first session at 7 p.m. Eastern. And if you want to participate in that, please sign up today so we can, have you be part of it. I'm going to actually put some links in the chat box. So if you guys want to be able to, go look and see if that is for you, then you can do that. One of the things that I thought today I would just talk about is just the idea that there can be times where we have to walk away from trading, and that may not be for long periods. It could be for even like a couple of hours, but I just want to speak to how important it is that you guys are really in tune to what is happening for you. I think a lot of times, because we have a culture that emphasizes this grind work ethic, there are times when we can overwork. Even if our work is poor, we may not even notice that because we're so caught up in just the deliverables. And I have seen a lot of traders be very hard on themselves and stay at the party too long. And what I mean by that metaphorically is there's usually a period where somebody has a sense that they're not operating on 100% of gas tank. It could be that you're feeling kind of exhausted, or could be that you're feeling frustrated. It could be that you're feeling, really triggered by something that happened with the trade earlier that day, that week, yesterday. And all I want to say to you is, yes, eventually you do have to become somebody who doesn't get triggered by that. But also what I want to say is you are going to be triggered sometimes. So you have to be conscious of when it's showing up. If it's showing up, first you have to notice it. You have to be conscious of it. You have to be in tune to the fact that it's showing up, because when it's invisible to you, that's when you potentially are going to be kind of taken for a spin. And that is not going to be healthy for you or for your capital. So I'm just checking here to see if there are any questions. Sandcat, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the box. I'm glad to have you be here. That line just there, that is the link to the more experienced trader small group. And there's a couple of seats left if you guys want trader group coaching package. All right, I'm not seeing any questions, and I would love to have those if you guys are game. It looks like we have a few regulars here. I see at least 5 people here. So let me know, guys, if there's anything that I can speak to specifically for you. Whenever I do these, I love to get the questions. Great, here, can you please talk about how to be patient for your setup and not to be in a rush to enter the trade? That's a great question, Sandcat. Here's the thing. Usually that impatience that one is having about waiting for a setup isn't so much about waiting for that specific setup. See if you can follow me here. What it's indicating is that you have a agenda about your trading. In my experience, what I've noticed is that when somebody is not being patient for their setup, it's not just begun that day. It's something you came into the day with, the week with, the month with. Part of what that is usually indicating is that you have an attachment to either time or the speed at which you're going to succeed as a trader. And part of what I'm suggesting is, let me ask you this, Sandcat, if you're able to still answer this question. If you yourself have a timeline around what you should be doing as a trader, do you have an expectation around when? What I see a lot is that traders have this kind of unreasonable expectation on themselves. And because of that, what happens is their patience gets worn down by the attachment to having it happen, to making it work. Here's a couple of catchphrases that I hear traders say a lot. I should have made that one. I should have more money in my P&L by now. I should be a better trader. I should understand this quicker. I shouldn't be taking so long. All of these are catchphrases that may or may not be true. I can understand and appreciate that people might be frustrated that it's taking longer than they wanted to. But every time you come into your trading with an agenda of what it should do, that is what's going to kick up the impatience. And the key here is ultimately you having patience with that one setup is going to be informed by you having the big picture patience for the journey. And that is an internal job. That means that we have to find a way to step into trading every day from neutrality, because there's going to be days when your setup is not there. There's going to be time when that setup takes way longer than you wanted to. It's okay to have the emotion come up of like, I wish this wasn't happening. No doubt. That's part of being human. You're going to never not be human. But you don't want to succumb to that temptation. You don't want to succumb to that impatience. So you're going to ultimately need to learn how to develop patience, period, and non-attachment. So I'm going to pause there, Sandcat. If there's any follow-up questions there you want to ask me, please feel free to, and I can speak more about it. I'm going to answer HT Master. Glad you're here. Do you think we should have daily targets? That's a great question. Before I get to this, okay, what else did you say? For me, it's been 3 years since, even though I'm wonderful at analysis, my results are not good. Do you think we should take breaks if we don't do well for some time, or should we keep pushing? Yes. Okay, so let me take that in 2 parts, HT Master. What I'm seeing here is that you're saying, should you have daily targets? Again, I really do think this is an individual decision. However, I am not a fan of those daily targets unless you are 100% sure that those targets are appropriate targets. If you have an unreasonable expectation of where you should be at, those targets are only going to kind of demoralize you. I would definitely speak to a trader who's perhaps more experienced than you, HT Master, to weigh in on what those appropriate targets might be. In my experience, it's infrequent that those daily targets are helpful. I hear that you've been 3 years a trader, but I don't know if that necessarily serves even traders who have been in it for much longer. There is other metrics that you could be measuring to see if you are being true to your pattern and to your word, to what you're there to be doing. And you want to be sure to measure all of those other variables instead of just the daily targets. I think that's something that happens for a lot of beginners. They have these daily targets, but I'm not sure that in the long haul, that is the most appropriate way to go. Now, it sounds like what you're struggling with is that you can see that you're wonderful at analysis, but that your results are not as good. I would be curious to know what it is about that. If you are willing to, HT Master, what I would suggest you do is journal every day around the specificity of what in those results is not good. I know there's I'm sure plenty of traders who have a checklist. I remember Tim Sykes having an 8-point checklist where he specifically says, like, every trade that you take has to meet these 8 specific criteria. I would love to see you come up with, whether it's Sykes's criteria, whether it's another trading room's criteria. I'd love for you to measure what every day happens for you so that you can start to narrow down what is causing your results to not be that good. There's something in there that likely, yes, I think it's not helping you that you have a daily target, but I can understand why you're tempted to keep that because the results are not good. So perhaps it's better for you to start measuring other behaviors you're having in the middle of that trading day for you to measure instead of that P&L. And regards to taking a break if you're not doing well, look, everybody is going to be different, right? If I just mentioned Tim Sykes, he's somebody that's always advocating you grind after hours in the weekend. I don't subscribe to that, but a lot of traders do. Yes, you're going to have to get screen time. Yes, there's no doubt in my mind you're going to have to commit so much time and energy to this. But if you are feeling burnt out, if you feel like you're on tilt, if you feel like you still are stuck and you can't get out of your own way, or that you're cooked from other stuff that's happening in your life, I do think there is a time and a place for a break. Celeste Headley, who's one of the people that I interviewed in my podcast, Wall Street Coach, talks about our cognitive abilities max out at 4 hours. I don't know how many hours a day you're trading, HT Master, but if you are trading a full day and you have any other kind of responsibilities, you have to be honest with yourself. Like, if you are cooked cognitively, I don't like to see traders be cooked cognitively and go into their trading. It's not going to be a happy ending. So I do think you have to really weigh in on, is your body, mind, and soul needing any kind of rest? Are you cognitively needing some rest? It could be that you need it. It doesn't mean you're being lazy. It just means you need to refuel. And that's what I would say. If you take a break, make sure that what you're doing is a refueling of things. All right, here, Sankat said, yes, I feel that way when I come to the desk, having expectations to succeed in a particular period of time. So Sankat, I'm so grateful to you that you spoke to that. I think many traders do this. They come in with a set expectation, and expectations are part of being human. We all have a tendency to create goals for ourselves and try to live into those goals. But one of my assessments, which I obviously am a big fan about, measures this specifically. And one of the things that it tells us is that there are people who often set unreasonably high goals for themselves. And that's what I want to pose to you, Sankat. Is it possible that you are holding unreasonably high standards and or an unreasonably unrealistic timeline? Because as a trader, Sankat, I don't know if you're trading full time. I don't know if you have a responsibility to children or adults, elders that you might have to take care of. You have to realize that all of your day-to-day responsibilities are going to need to still be adhered to, even when you do trade full time or part time. So ultimately, what I want to ask you is it possible that this particular period of time to have found success, is that a reasonable expectation that you have for yourself? And if it isn't, which possibly it isn't, if you're bumping into impatience, waiting for your setup all the time, again, all the time or once, there's a difference. If it's all the time, then it's probably informed by you having this unreasonable expectation. So what I'm going to recommend you do is expose yourself to a collective of very honest, responsible, non-braggadocious traders out there, right? The traders who are really coming from a place of humility. Listen to how long they say it takes to become a successful trader. Listen to how long they say it took them. Everybody's going to be unique, but if you listen to 10 or 20 sophisticated traders who are not, just in it to, kind of perhaps not be forthright. I had a couple of other choice words, but I controlled myself. You want to listen to all of their perspectives on this timeline and let that inform you. All right, Ali Trader, I'm glad you're here. Thank you for joining us today. I can't hold a profitable trade, but I hold a losing trade. What's my advice? Great question. So, Ali, if you're willing to speak to it, I'm curious what happens for you with a profitable trade. What happens when you see that trade and it's profitable and you find yourself, I presume, kind of getting worried and dropping it? It's possible that what's afoot there is you not having your risk actually be in an appropriate level for what your comfort with that risk is. ultimately holding a profitable trade means you're going to be bumping into loss, right? Because at any moment you could potentially lose it. The key is if your risk is intolerable, it's just way more than you're comfortable with, you're going to likely cut that before you can see your profits. So I would say do some work around, is that trade and the risk you're taking on there too much? And if it is, then you probably have to lower your risk so you can hold on to it. It's possibly, it's a fluctuating comfort level. So I would say, find that a comfort level that makes you perhaps a little uncomfortable, but not fully on tilt. That's how I would say you kind of gauge and measure yourself. Yes, you're going to have to go to an edge of discomfort, but if you feel like you're going to freak out and potentially cut that trade, then you've obviously taken too much risk. That would be my first plan of attack with that question. The other question is, what is going on with your relationship to loss? If you're able to hold on to a losing trade, two things could be afoot. One of them is you are more attached again to just, having it do what you said it was going to do, right? Because whenever you have a losing trade, basically you thought you were in the right, you thought you saw something, and as soon as you notice that you were wrong, the inability to admit that mistake, the inability to be incorrect, is sometimes often what keeps people in a losing trade. It's because you're coming from a place of having to be right. So I would say, Ali Trader, take a look at that. Is it because you have to be right about that losing trade? And is it because your risk is too robust for your taste buds? Risk is something you get more comfortable with over time. And depending on how long you've been trading for, Ali, hi, Jasmine, I'm so glad you're here. Depending on how long you've been trading, Ali, that is the heart of risk, right? Even for me as a business owner, like my tolerance for risk over the past 17 years having my own business has completely changed since I started. Because when I first started, I was coming from a day job where I got a paycheck every 2 weeks deposited automatically into my bank account. When I first started working here, hi Tina, I'm so glad you're here. I hope everything is clear, guys, because I'm on Restream, which hopefully allows it to go to other platforms. But I was so worried my YouTube people wouldn't find me here or I wouldn't see your statements, but it looks like it's all working. So I'm so glad. Hopefully it looks the same. Tina and Jasmine, you guys can tell me. I think all the other guys that are here are first timers. Sam Cat and Ali Trader and HT Master, though you were here too, HT Master in the past. So I'm so glad you're here. It looks good on YouTube. Perfect, Jasmine. Thanks for the thumbs up and the input. I'm so glad. All right. So I think what I was just wanting to say to you, Ali Trader, is just you want to really take a look at what these comfort levels are with you, because ultimately your risk tolerance will increase over time. All right. So what percentage do you think of psychology is trading? Some say 90%. Does that mean we should not spend so much time trying to find a strategy? That's a really great question, HT Master. I'm so glad you asked it. I want to say that I think the psychology behind trading is actually, hi Thomas, so glad you're here. I think it's 100% impact. And that does not mean you should not spend a great deal of time finding a strategy. Finding a strategy is of critical importance to your longevity as a trader. To, first of all, forget longevity, to just simply be able to trade successfully, even at the beginning. But what I mean by it's 100% psychology is ultimately just like your car, right? If you're going to take your car on any kind of road trip, right? You're going to have to get gas in that car, and you're going to need to, have oil in the engine, and you're going to need to have antifreeze or coolant of some kind in that vehicle because it's going to get warm at some point. All of those are pieces that inform the car. So let's just say in this example, your strategy is the gas in that tank, right? But if that car has the gas tank filled, but the tires are flat, you're not going to get anywhere. I really think perhaps that's like the psychology of what is your relationship to money, which is what happens the first night of my group coaching. We're going to talk about your relationship to money, because your relationship to money is going to inform your risk tolerance. It's going to inform what happens to you when you do lose capital. It's going to inform what happens to you even when you succeed, how attached you might get to your P&L and or to what your daily profits are. All of these are things that are informed by relationship to money, your relationship to yourself. If you are not aware of yourself, how are you going to be able to be aware of yourself when you trade? And ultimately, what it comes down to in trading is to be able to be in a place of non-attachment and to just have had sort of the screen time of experience where you can recognize, right, your pattern recognition. That is so critical. But what we came up with, guys, right, a couple of weeks ago, we came up with, not only do you have to have your pattern recognition, but you also have to have your emotional pattern recognition down. That's why I think it's so critical for any trader to be completely self-aware. That is the key. Good for you, Jasmine. I'm so glad you've been working on the non-attachment. That's awesome. And look, guys, non-attachment is something we have to learn and practice if we want to evolve, even within our own life. That's why I say all the time, trading is the best school of consciousness there is. Trading is the best school for enlightenment, because all of the places you have attachments, you have stories, you have a victim mentality, you have not been with heart to be with feelings, you see yourself not as the hero of your journey, any place you're not self-aware. All of these are places that trading is going to find that button in you and come in with a pop quiz to see, have you learned anything yet? That is what trading is all about. It finds and smells the weaknesses, the places inside of you that you haven't developed, the places inside of you where you have these attachments or stories that keep you stuck. Jasmine says, trading has taught me so much about myself and learning more daily. Jasmine, it's the God's honest truth. It's going to constantly force us to look in the mirror at what it is that we are so attached to. And there's nothing wrong with noticing these attachments, but if you even have judgment over the fact that you have these attachments, you're going to be potentially in some kind of like loop de loop. The key is like, oh, it's human. It's human and normal to be attached. It's human and normal to, want to have things happen fast. But when they don't happen fast, how do I handle that? When they don't go my way, how do I handle that? When things go completely pear-shaped, do I panic? Or do I find a way to find that center so I can stay calm, even in the midst of great volatility? Ultimately, these are all the skills that you want to develop as a trader. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you keep looking at what the market shows you about yourself from a place of curiosity, from a place of neutrality. Those are the two words I want you guys to put on a Post-it. I want you to get a Post-it out, and I want you to put those two words on it. And I want you to take that Post-it, and I want you to slap it up on your screen, slap it up on the wall above your screens. I want you to keep that in mind. Am I being neutral today? When I sit at my trading desk, am I being curious? Those two words are going to become your favorite go-to places, because once you start to practice neutrality, I promise in your day-to-day life, you can't help but bring it into your trading. All right, HT Master, I wonder if you're allowed to tell some stories from traders you worked with and their problems and how they solved it. I know this is a very wide open question, so I respect an answer. Happy to answer that question. A lot of what gets worked on with traders is the emotional volatility that every trader faces. And part of what I've worked on with a lot of traders is teaching them how to practice what I call my third practice, emotionally non-resistance. What does that mean? That means if you were here, HT Master, I think you were, for the day when I did we took the elevator from the head down into the body. Part of what I teach a lot of traders is how to serve the emotions that come up for them, be it loss, be it success, sometimes be it failure, be it the top of the food chain. These are all emotions that most traders have not learned how to be with. And a lot of the current triggers in your trading account aren't so much isolated triggers, but they're attached to another event that happened to you when you were younger that gets kind of re-triggered because it never fully got healed. And what happens is when an event occurs today, you will see that old story, that old trigger, that old emotion gets rejiggered. And a lot of what I've done with traders is take them back into the body so they can go and feel those emotions once and for all. Because once you feel an emotion, it has the chance to discharge. It doesn't always happen the first time. Sometimes it takes many visits to that emotional landscape internally for it to pass. But if you don't visit those emotions, if you don't let them come forward, you're going to absolutely have them trapped within you. And when something looks like, feels like, smells like, seems like, is what happens to you, you're going to have that old memory come back up, and you'll probably be hijacked by that emotion because you haven't fully processed it. So hopefully that answers your question, HG Master. I hope it does, but feel free to put it in a follow-up if you want to. Rick Rule notes that the irony that the older he gets and less time left on Earth, the more patient he becomes. Tom, that is such a beautiful thing to speak to, and I can understand exactly what he means. I identify with that, though I've always been able to hold for a very extended time. So Thomas, I'm so glad you spoke to that as well. I think part of this patience that happens as you get older is you begin to you begin to let go of your attachments more. As you get older, you start to really kind of qualify or rather step away from qualifiers. You start to step into moments where you feel or see or sense peace or joy or abundance. You're more connected to the kind of big picture of the experience of life. And you're able to, because of that big picture, sort of zoom in on, that little rose that you want to smell right now and are present to the aroma that beautiful rose may have. I think that is part of what happens as you get older. And it's grace, really. I think the grace of living a long time. And Thomas, what I want to say about you being able to hold for a very extended period of time, that tells me that you likely are infrequently coming to the market with an agenda. It tells me that you're likely coming to your screens every day with a reasonable and appropriate goal for yourself. There's nothing wrong with goals, guys. Don't think I'm dismissing goals. I'm not dismissing them. But what I'm suggesting is that if the goal is unreasonably high, if the goal is impractically high, that's when you set yourself up for resistance to it and pulling out too soon. But the fact that you don't, Thomas, tells me that it's possible you don't have this unreasonable timeline. It also tells me that you probably have this anchor within yourself that allows you to find your center regardless of the volatility that's been happening in the market or in that trading day or it just over your career as a trader. But I'm really happy to hear that quote about Rick Rule. I really love that more patient he gets over time. And I really think that's what the market is teaching everybody all the time. It's teaching everybody how to be comfortable with uncertainty and how to be comfortable with being patient. I have this light that helps things, but it's killing my eyes today. So I'm going to shut that off. So I don't want you guys to think like, where'd she go? I'm just shutting that light off because it's just hurting. It's hurting my eyes right now. And I don't want to have a headache afterwards. So, all right, guys. So what are our other questions? We've got 13 people here. So happy to have you all here. Glad you guys are here. I do this almost every weekday, Tuesday through Friday, or probably Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. I probably won't be able to do these on Mondays, but I would love for you guys to join us. Part of what I do is coach those who put questions inside the chat box. So please feel free to add your comments there. If there's something specific you want me to take on, I would love to do that. We have a couple of seats left for the Accelerated Coaching Group Coaching Program. If you guys are interested in that, please let me know. It starts Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern, and I'd love for you to be part of it. We're going to talk about relationship to money, relationship to FOMO. We're going to dive into a lot that's going to be addressed in a really fast amount of time. In just 6 weeks, we're going to go deep. And there's a whole bunch of free things you get with that, including my trading EQ course, which I think we have. It's valued at like $500. You're going to get that complimentary. You're going to get a whole bunch of tools, and you're going to get access to my Discord room, guys, for 2 months, which is right now $2.99 a month for the traders that have coaching with me on Wednesday. So there's a lot of bonuses we're giving in the trader group coaching if you guys are interested. Also, if you don't already belong to my newsletter, Curtain Call, please sign up. I'll put a link in the chat box too. That is a email that I send out every week, which specifically speaks to questions that really all of us need to ask ourselves often. These are kind of provocative questions that help you look within yourself to really just see, are you coming from any place that's, again, resistant or a drag? Like swimmers swim. Swimmers rather shave before a big meet. Why do they do that? Because they want no drag. They want nothing on their body to slow them and their swimming down. Ultimately, guys, the things we're talking about are things that drag your trading, drag you down emotionally, physically, strategically. Like anytime there's a hole in your gas tank, you can't but help have a slowdown happen. You're going to run out of gas quicker. So the key is, how do you start to really suss out where are your limiting beliefs? Where are the things or places that you inadvertently go that causes you, sorry for the siren in the background, that cause you a cost, right? Because at the end of the day, you guys are going to have a cost to your trading if you don't get those limiting beliefs out of the way. This is the whole key of why I'm such an advocate for self-awareness, because the self-awareness that you guys are practicing is going to reflect in how you view everything. Uh, all of, there's a famous saying that I say all the time: if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. The key here is starting to become self-aware of what your triggers are, what your beliefs are, what are the stories you repeatedly tell yourself or your gremlins repeatedly tell yourself. And if you can start to pay really close attention to all of these things, you get the opportunity to potentially take other choices. You can't make new choices until you see the limitations to the current choices. All right, HT Master, there was a time I had regretted making money. And is it possible, I think you're asking, that I'm now self-sabotaging myself in trading? How can I overcome that trauma? HT Master, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I did wonder that when you asked the question, but because of some of the way you worded it, I wasn't sure if that would be okay to say. So I'm glad you brought it up. So if you are self-sabotaging yourself when you are making money, which is definitely part of what could be informing you getting out of those winning trades early. And I think that was you, right? Was that you? I'm just making sure that wasn't somebody else, but it's still applicable regardless. I think it was Ali Trader, actually. Ali Trader talked about not being able to hold a winning trade. But HT Master, if you suspect that it is self-sabotage, I would do some work. I mean, look, HT Master, I don't know if you're in a position to join that small group coaching that starts Thursday night, but that's the first thing we're going to talk about is money and relationship to money. So that trauma, like, you got to, first of all, have empathy for yourself that you have it in the first place. If that is the case, I empathize with you. If that's your main issue, not holding the trades that are the winners, then again, look at that risk factor, make sure it's not inappropriately high. But I would say you got to do some work around your relationship to money, because if we come from a poor middle class background and then we at some point as a trader start to really find success, it can be cognitive dissonance, right? A poor middle class, when you grow up poor middle class, or you are an adult and you're poor middle class, ultimately you have probably a philosophy that the only way to get ahead is to work hard, right? There can be this kind of belief system that you have to get your hands dirty to make money, right? Or that you're going to have to grind all night long to make money. Like, that is part of poor middle class beliefs. If you've ever heard of the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you see that reflected in the one father, the poor dad, believes that the harder he works, the better chance he's going to have to make money. And what you learn in that book, when you hear the rich father speak, that he is working not so much hard, but smarter, right? So why do I bring this up? If you are coming from a poor middle class background, or are still friends with and hang out with people who are at a different kind of financial level than you potentially are capable of, or find yourself moving into, it can be very threatening to our sense of tribe, to our sense of identity. A lot of times, people who are in whatever of these subsects, poor, middle class, or rich, their identity is tied into that label. So you can easily fall into this trap of self-sabotaging, because it feels like you might have abandoned or betrayed your tribe. That you're like, one of the phrases that's famous about how tribes will hold us back is called crabs in the bucket, where you will see crabs. If one crab seems to be succeeding at climbing up and out and escaping that bucket, what will the other crabs do? They will pull him back in. He doesn't get to leave if we don't get to leave. That's what humans are like. The other one is called tall poppy syndrome. This is very common in Australia. What is that about? It means if there's a poppy a little taller or higher than the other poppies, it will be cut down, because everybody has to be the same height. And this happens. We cut our own poppies down. We have a tendency to self-sabotage because we feel like, wait, I'm going to be a person that stands out from this crowd. I'm potentially going to be judged by my friends, by my family, especially because trading, we all know, anybody here, I know you guys know that trading is hard, but let's also be honest. It's not digging a ditch. It's not working in a quarry. It's not working in a coal mine, right? Trading might be hard, but it's a cognitive hardness. And it can be physical too if you don't have a standing desk, but it's not back breaking, working in a quarry, working in a coal mine kind of work. And a lot of the poor middle class work ethic would sort of be like, if you aren't physically working hard, how could you possibly make this kind of money? So it can be a cognitive dissonance, not because those are your stories, but because they could have been your parents' stories. They could be your friends' stories. They could be the siblings you hang out with. Everybody has these stories, and the key is you have to know what are your stories. And remember, T. Harv Eker talks about this at great length in his book, which is a great book, HT Master. There's so many books on money that I would love to recommend to you, but I think I'm going to suggest his first, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. It's a phenomenal book, and it really helps us pull apart what our money temperature is, right? We all have a set point, Eker teaches us. He speaks to how we have like an HVAC and heat system in our body. And let's say our set point gets set at, let's say, 65 degrees when we're kids, then what's going to, with our relationship to money, we all have a set point, and we have a tendency, no matter how much money comes in, how much money goes out, those who have this set point will tend to gravitate always back to that temperature that it's set at. So what is your money temperature, HT Master? That's what I would ask you. The money harmony assessment is something that I recommend everybody do. I know it's hard to find out there, but it's on one person's site. It's like another person's website. Part of the reason I recommend you get clear on what your relationship to money is, HT Master, because if you have this set point, and this is part of why lottery winners have a tendency to be, back to where they were financially a year or two after the money is, they blow through it, or give it to family because they feel guilty that their family doesn't have money. This is what happens to movie stars and a lot of rock stars, or sports stars, right? They've never had a lot of money before. Now they suddenly have a lot, and they have this kind of disconnection to being okay with the money. And, you also find friends and loved ones come out of the woodwork who are like, hey, can you help me? Would you help me? You have so much now. And it's hard to say no to people who have been your best friend for 20 years. You don't want to be kind of ostracized or left on the curb, and people will accuse you as you start to have success, financial or otherwise. Who do you think you are? You think you're better than me? Even if they don't say it quite as rawly as that, it can be implied. And sometimes that voice is an internal one, where your inner gremlin or inner saboteur will say to you, oh, you think you're better now that you're making this much money? Or you think you're better? Like, we can come up against that, and that can hold us like with an invisible glass ceiling over our head. The chickens and the roosters are outside my office today, so if you guys hear them, that's what that noise is. All right, what do we have? Ali Trader, having money never harm anyone. Ali, I have to say, I think having money can harm people sometimes, to be honest. And I agree, not having money can harm some people. But I think, honestly, again, it goes back to your beliefs about money. But there are a lot of people who do come into a lot of wealth unexpectedly, who can cause a lot of harm, certainly to their own bank account, never mind to other people. A lot of money can be spent in frivolous ways because certain people don't get a true relationship built like it's money and ourselves. It's an intimate relationship. And there are a lot of times where that intimate relationship hasn't really been worked through. This is one of the stories that I love to tell about how we all have these stories within ourselves. I'm positive I told it here once before, guys, on this YouTube channel, but I'm going to tell it again. It's a young gal who sees her mom cooking a pot roast at this, big holiday dinner, and her mom cuts the ends off the pot roast all the time, puts it in the pan, puts it in the oven. And she says to her mother, "Why are you cutting the ends off?" And the mother says, "I don't know. That's the way my mother always did it." So this is like 3 generations where each grandmother gets asked, and I don't know, my mother always did it that way. So at the end of the story, they get to the, matriarch of the great-great-grandmother. She's still alive in my stories. So they can ask her. And they say, we're all confused. Why you cut the ends off the pot roast? Like, is that part of how the meat gets cooked? And she looked at them all and said, "No, it was because my pot was too small." So what is that an example of? That's an example of a Depression era grandmother, right, who has very little money, who has a very small pot, has to cut the ends off a pot roast to cook it. And what her daughter and the daughter's daughter, they don't even question this habit of cutting the ends off when it's their turn. Now, clearly, all these other women have pots that are big enough, but they're continuing to do it because it's an invisible, baked-in recipe that they don't even question. I propose that all of us have these stories about money that are invisible to us, that we've never even questioned, that we've never even taken a hard look at. It could be that we believe people who are rich are snobs. It could be that people who are rich are smart. It could be that poor people are lazy, or that poor people are victims. All of these are just examples of the stories that our parents and their parents and or other parents had. It also can go back to whether our parents are immigrants. Did they have to land in a new country from another country? And did they have to kind of like pull themselves up by hook or crook to get success? All of these are stories then that get created, that get filtered into us. The key is, are you aware of them? There are people that we see every day, from people asking for change on the street to people who are walking down with, let's say, a fur coat on. And if you listen to the dialogue in your head, the judgments you have about the person who's broke, or the person who has no money whatsoever, or the person who looks rich, there's a whole bunch of characteristics you assign to both of those people. I assign to both of those people. The key is questioning, are those character associations correct? Are the conclusions you have about those people actually real? And perhaps they are not. Perhaps they're all made up based on the stories that you heard in the household you grew up on. And that's what I want everybody to get really connected to. I want you to start to really get curious about what those stories are about having money, about not having money. One of the things that's so obvious in trading is that even with the perfect system, even with perfect recognition, even with the patience of a saint, even if you do everything right, miraculously, you could still be unlucky, right? You could still be unlucky. So this is evidence, just like around money, that even if you could do everything right, you could still get unlucky. These are the stories that everybody has, and the key is you've got to unpack them for your own well-being so that you can come to a place of seeing things as they truly are, instead of projecting onto them what it is you want them to be or think they might be. And that's part of our cognitive bias. Our cognitive bias that we're all potentially guilty of is that we think our perspective is the right perspective. It's the best perspective. And I can tell you that is not the case. There are many perspectives out there that might be way better than our perspective. The key is, are we exposed to all of them? If not, then I would say it's time to get those perspectives stretched for yourself so that you can be somebody who sees things from multiple perspectives, especially as a trader. Ultimately, I would hope every trader who takes a trade is able to tell me exactly why the person on the other side of that trade is taking their trade. Because if you're not familiar with exactly what's going on for the person on the other side of your trade, that tells me you may not actually have all of the clarity you need to be taking the trade you're taking. So these are all just examples of ways that you can kind of do some due diligence internally for yourself. All right, it's 54 minutes in. Tell me if you have any last questions, guys. And I hope it worked well today this way. I think it was on these other platforms, but to tell you the truth, I have no idea. So what matters to me, though, is that all my YouTube people who have been so great here the whole time are here, and that there was no interruption in that. But I think it is live on Twitter. So anyway, hopefully it's working on all the other platforms. Ultimately, if I'm going to do this, I want to just make sure that I'm able to do it for as many people as possible, because I want it to be contribution. Mike, I'm so glad you're here. What was the takeaway for you today, Mike? If you want to share it in the chat box, please feel free to do so. Hi, Chad. I'm so glad you're here. I'm getting ready to wrap it up, but I'm curious if you, Chad, or you, Mike, have any questions. The HT Master, you are very welcome. And you are very welcome too, Mike. If there's anything that really spoke to you today, Mike, please let me know. I'd love to hear it. And Chad, if you have any questions before I sign off in a few minutes, just let me know. Mike said, I love the concept of breaking those tribal beliefs. Good. I'm really glad that spoke to you. And some of those tribal beliefs, right, are all baked into us, right? Yeah, it came from blue collar pride. Totally hear that. I'm so glad you spoke to that, Mike. In fact, let me tell you guys about a book that specifically, I think it's called Blue Collar, what is it called? Blue Collar Dreams. Let me get this title. And if I can't find it, guys, I'll bring it to the next session. But there is a specific book, Mike, that, me and my books, I read so much, but I think it's called Blue Collar Blues or Blue Collar Riches. But it's written by a journalist who came from a blue collar background, and he became a journalist. And that was like complete, he was supposed to become a construction worker, and his father wanted him to be a construction worker. Like he was just so kind of sort of like made fun of for wanting to be a journalist. Like, oh, you think you're smarter than us? Oh, you think you're so smart? Like, he got so much pushback from his friends, from his family, because they just thought, oh, he's better than all of us. He thinks he can't work in construction, or he can't become an electrician or plumber or whatever. Like, they just gave him so much shit. And I just thought that book is so helpful. It's really kind of more of a biography, but I think it's helpful to anybody that comes from like a blue collar pride background to really help see how insidious those stories can be, and how it informs this sense of shame for not going that route for that man. Like, he struggled with it for years. I mean, he wrote the book, I think, in his 40s, and he struggled with it. It had this like low grade shame, as if he somehow betrayed his people by becoming a journalist, which is so fucked up when you think about it. It's so crazy. And yet it happens all the time. And I'll tell you guys, one of the things that I always thought was so fascinating, because I had spent time. Remember, I sat outside the stock exchange for a year coaching. I did life coaching on a bench outside the New York Stock Exchange from October 2008 till October 2009. I did it for 1 year, guys. I coached a lot of traders from the stock exchange floor. And I have to tell you, the majority of those traders all came from blue collar backgrounds. Almost all of them came from a blue collar background. Very, very few were college educated. These are traders on the stock exchange floor. So, not saying there aren't those who have a college education, but I'm just saying there were a lot of traders from that floor that all came from that blue collar background. Even if they did go to college, they still came from that, and their roots were strong and sturdy. And I think it sabotaged a lot of them. A lot of traders, obviously, the money goes, on things that help them numb, because I do think there is a bit of a disconnect sometimes between having great wealth and having this sense of shame if you have great wealth when you compare yourself to those who are in your family or tribe. Shane, I'm so glad you're here. That's interesting. Most in the prop firms came from Ivy League schools. Yes, absolutely true. I really think that there is this chasm that exists in finance, and you can see it in almost every. I've worked in 2 hedge funds, and most of those guys came from an Ivy League school, but there was always an outlier or two who had, knew somebody that knew somebody and was a phenomenal trader, and there would be an exception made, right? So, but there was always this rift, like between the Ivy Leaguers and those who, the light is blowing over again because the wind got really strong, guys. Who there was always this rift between the blue collar guys and like the blue collar guys. So I think the key is for you guys to really get that whether we like it or not, there is a stigma based on the class you come from. India obviously has a caste system, but I have to tell you guys, whether we want it to be the case or not, America has a caste system too. And it's called blue collar, it's called poor, it's called middle class, it's called rich. There's a lot of caste system here in this country. And the key is recognizing that you have been steeped into it unconsciously. And if you want to not be ruled by it, then you're going to have to unpack it, look under the hood for a little bit. Thomas says that's the crux of the meme stock guys blowing up the big guy short. Absolutely, Thomas. That is so true. It was like, I'm going to take on the man. And what did the man? The man represented to them the Ivy League school, the guy, the man in the firm, right? That phrase, take on the man. That's even like a catchphrase that everybody knows. Ultimately, that mentality, even if you made certain choices during that time, the insanity that you were going to get back at somebody, that is where the thing went off the rails. You have to see that this is a whole bunch of human beings who are being triggered with shame, right? What happens for people on either sides of the spectrum when you have a lot of money and you're surrounded by people who maybe don't? You feel sometimes, if you're not a sociopath, you'll feel a sense of shame. Am I worthy of this? Did I work hard enough to get this? Am I going to be able to be smart enough to hold on to it, right? Do these other people don't have it and I do, right? There's a whole bunch of things that come up, but shame is involved in both of them. If you have somebody, Keith Ferrazzi wrote a book I love so much called Never Eat Alone. And he talks about him being at this, very well-to-do school, but he couldn't afford it was a private school, I think. I don't know if it was a Catholic school, but it was a private school, and he had to have a jacket. But his parents couldn't afford for him to get the jacket. So he had to go to the thrift store and get a secondhand version of the jacket. That's all they could afford. And while he was in the store, he saw kids from his school, and he hid behind the racks because he was ashamed. He didn't want them to see that he had to buy a secondhand version of this jacket. that shame is going to show up no matter what caste system you're in with money. The key is pulling it apart, healing it, not being invisibly held to that caste system, because it's going to sabotage your success ultimately. All right. I'm so glad you said that, Thomas. That was such a good point that you just made. It's so good. You guys are so good. I love you all. I love doing these. They're so much fun. But you guys and your questions is what makes them fun. Remember, if you're interested in those last couple of seeds that I have, the Sophisticated Trader Small Group Coaching, send me a DM in Twitter. Please sign up for Curtain Call, which is my newsletter. You can go to my Linktree bio to sign up for Curtain Call and to see a variety of things we have there to support you guys in your adventures as a very, very intrepid trader. I think you guys are awesome. I love the questions you bring me. I'm going to do this tomorrow. That's what I got to look at, guys. I got to look if I can do it tomorrow. I am going to really strive to do tomorrow. And that would be at 4, 5, 6, 7 p.m. Eastern. I'm in Hawaii. You guys know that. So I'm 6 hours behind. So I always have to do the 6-hour time change. So yes, if I do this tomorrow, which I think I can, I'm more than 50% sure that I can, it'll be at 7 p.m. Eastern. And hopefully this format will work again. You guys rock. Thank you so much for all your great questions. And I will see you hopefully tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern, on this restream. A hui ho for now, which means in Hawaiian or in English,